Senator Padilla, you're recognized for your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, first of all, I know there's been a lot of talk for several weeks now about Title 42, and what it means if and when it is lifted on May 23rd or another date. To remind us on the committee and to remind the public that what Title 42 is and what it isn't. Title 42 is not an immigration law. It's a public health regulation. The other thing that's important to remind folks is we're engaging in important conversations about immigration policy and the asylum process, is that it is absolutely legal for people who come from around the world to the United States to request asylum. Doesn't mean it's automatically guaranteed, but it is lawful to request asylum based on conditions that one or a family is fleeing. So I personally was happy to see the administration announce an end to Title 42 and the resumption of asylum processing at the border. Now, I know some of my colleagues would like the American public to think that taking down Title 42 is a major shift in policy. But lifting a public health order, which is what Title 42 is, actually would only return us to our existing immigration laws, where people seeking asylum in the country are allowed to exercise that legal right. Now, this legal right has been on the books for decades. My first question is for Ms. Mandrala. What obligations exist under U.S. and international law to allow people to exercise their right, their legal right to ask for asylum, and what impact did Title 42 have on that right?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. With respect to U.S. immigration law, I'll defer to my colleagues on the panel. With respect to international law, there are laws in countries throughout the region. Each country's protection, the legal framework for protection and asylum is unique. One of the priorities of the State Department is to work with partner countries, select countries, to strengthen their protection mechanisms and to strengthen their asylum systems so that individuals seeking refuge in those countries can find meaningfully access in an efficient way protection in the countries where they seek it, and not be forced to take the journey to the United States in order to do so.
And second part of the question was, how did Title 42 help or hurt that process?
Sir, it's unique on every country context. I think just as the United States put in place a public health order at our border, many countries throughout the region enacted similar public health measures as well to require additional public health documentation upon entering a country, or to enact movement restrictions that we saw globally. The number of people on the move, migrating, be it irregularly or regularly, during the pandemic dropped dramatically because of generalized movement restrictions and quarantine, be those imposed by the state or self-imposed.
All right. Look, I think from a layman's point of view, certainly didn't make things better. And I know we're living in unique times given a once-in-a-century global health pandemic, but it would be hard-pressed to suggest that the absence of the ability for somebody to seek asylum, a lawful opportunity, when you limit or constrain lawful opportunities to migrate, that only serves to add pressures and demands for unlawful methods of migration. So I don't think it's been a success by that measure. Let me change topics here for a second. I want to focus on DHS's plans for the wind down of Title 42. Again, I was glad to see that one of the 6 pillars of the plan for the end of Title 42 is focused on coordination and communication with NGOs at the border, as well as with state and local governments. I think this coordination is going to be key to ensuring that groups have time to prepare and local communities do not become overburdened as they receive and support individuals who have been screened. And only those properly released to continue with their immigration cases. I'm proud of the work that the state of California has done with groups in my state, including the California Welcoming Task Force, who have been working to support people who are coming to our country to seek safety. But they cannot effectively continue to do that without adequate communication and coordination from DHS, let alone financial assistance, but that's another conversation. I want to urge that the people working tirelessly at the department to prepare to return to a safer, more orderly, and more humane process at the border, particularly the SBCC, closely coordinate and communicate with NGOs and state and local governments, and not just in California, but across the border. Question for Mr. Nunez Neto. Can you walk us through the steps that you're taking as part of this plan to bolster the capacities and the preparedness of NGOs to receive non-citizens after they've been processed by CBP?
Yeah, thank you for that question, sir. And I'm happy to start the answer, but we'll hand it off to the senior coordinating official, Marianne Tierney, because the SBC is really where the rubber meets the road. So we have been working through FEMA's Emergency Food and Shelter Grant Program to provide resources to NGOs to help really, with the all the back end things that they do to, move migrants and non-citizens along to their final destinations. We are deeply thankful of, Congress enacting additional funds for that program this year. I will say, as Marianne often notes, that there continues to be a gap between what the U.S. government can do and what the need is. And I'll maybe hand the baton over to her to describe how the SBCC is trying to fill that gap.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Senator, for that question. I will agree with you that I think California has a very robust system for addressing the migrant surge in that state, in particular the California Office of Emergency Services, the City and County of San Diego, as well as the two primary NGOs servicing those areas. A lot of work has been done by the CBP lead field coordinator, again, the senior official on the ground responsible for coordinating all of this, to establish regularized and robust interaction with the state and with locals. For example, at the CBP Emergency Operations Center for Region 9, which covers California, Cal OES and Cal Health have representatives in that location. I believe that is kind of the gold standard and the ideal that I would personally like to see across the southwest border in terms of complete physical integration of those operations. In addition, a lot of work has been done with the NGOs. I'll use California as an example because one of the first things I did when I got this assignment was go visit the border, and in each of my locations, I did meet with NGOs and tour their operations and discuss with them their challenges. And that ongoing interaction and operational coordination was a key thing that I heard as well as something that was not as robust as it needed to be. And that's something at the SBCC with the lead field coordinators we have worked I would say relentlessly to improve through regularized and recurring meetings, both with NGOs and with state and local officials that have an operational role. That's occurred in California, as I mentioned, which I believe is the gold standard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hate to interrupt, but I don't want to be the only member that didn't go over his time. I want to ask one more quick question, but before I do, underscore what you just said. If California is the model through that interagency coordination and collaboration, then I invite all my colleagues on this committee and across the Senate to support replicating that model throughout the southwest border, not just on the California side. But my final item, just quickly, now DHS has indicated also that in preparation for a potential increase in migration, the agency will focus on targeting people who attempt to cross the border more than once for criminal prosecution as part of the agency's initiative to escalate consequences and conserve processing resources. The agency has also indicated that it will refer for prosecution, quote, those whose conduct warrants it. And while that may sound good at the surface level, I'm concerned about the plan to use prosecution as a deterrent without being, clear-eyed and focused on how it's applied. In the past, such deterrent policies haven't always worked, and instead were just used to punish asylum seekers, which we've already established is lawful. So it's a potential huge violation of U.S. obligations under the Refugee Convention. Question for Mr. Huffman. Does CBP have plans to refer asylum seekers for prosecution, and if not, how you're going to safeguard that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. As you know, that the United States government secures its border by proper application of administrative and criminal law. That's the method we use for securing our borders, and that's what we do. The plan to increase prosecution for those that warrant it, and generally will be primarily someone who's been referred for expedited removal. They've been removed and they've returned. They've already gone through that process already to do that. I can tell you that no one will be referred to prosecution simply because they're an asylum seeker. That would be well outside our guidelines. In addition to that, we refer cases for criminal prosecution if we feel they should be prosecuted. The U.S. Attorney has ultimate determination if they would go forward with that case. But as foes that as we say, circumstances warranted would be people that may try to harm a Border Patrol agent, may put somebody else in danger, those kind of circumstances that increase the likelihood of it's a dangerous person. Could be their criminal record. They may have some sort of record also that warrants it, that may lead it to be more likely a candidate for criminal prosecution. There's a number of factors along those ways that can do that well.
So,
sir.
Thank you for a response. In closing, I just want to underscore, we'll be following up to ensure proper communication of that understanding, change in policies, training of folks on the ground and closer to the ground to make sure that what you're suggesting here is followed through in practice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Senator